So you were out in front of this Trent Williams thing months ago, and here we are, and he's not in camp for the Redskins. Any movement at all? Any whispers? You hearing anything?
No, I mean, I think the only way out, and we talked about this, I believe, the last time I was on, is, at this point is a trade. If they want to keep calling his bluff, it's going to get him nowhere. He's, as stuck in as could be. He's not willing to risk anything else to play for them. And he's made that clear to them, and they've known for quite some time. And I think it's become obvious to all parties, and even in their hearts, they must know that it's over with him. Mm-hmm. So, how do you rectify it? Well, I mean, I guess if you really want to, drag it out in the next year, you could. But look at what just happened, what the Houston Texans just did, and how desperate they were to trade for Laremy Tunsil, who's younger and has more upside, but also is about to – they gave up a quarterback ransom for him, and they don't even know what he's going to cost them yet. He hasn't even asked for the $20 million yet a year. They haven't even gotten there. They were just, hey, here's a and we'll worry about the rest later. So to me, the Redskins were one of the winners out of the weekend in that you look at what desperate teams are willing to do, and I think Bill O'Brien no one's going to be that desperate. I think he's on an island when it comes to that degree of panic. But a player of that magnitude playing a position of that's that vital to your success, and knowing he's a fixed cost for 2 years, it would be a steal. A little over 11 a year if he's healthy. That's a steal. There's a trade to be made there, and unless they're completely moronic about it, they'll eventually do something, and it should include a first-round pick.
Jason, do you think that, getting back to the Texans for a second, do you think that they believe inside that front office that they're that close to pulling the trigger for the Tunsil deal and dealing off Clowney, especially with Luck retiring? They might feel, look, we can win the AFC South with these moves.
Well, you say the front office. It's one dude, right?
Yeah,
and he's also the coach, and the coach cares about tomorrow. He doesn't care about 5 tomorrows from now, right? And he certainly doesn't care about, 300 tomorrows from now. I mean, you're talking about Bill O'Brien, who won another power struggle, who is now existing without a general manager, who knows that just winning that division that's been awful more years than not isn't enough to placate the fan base anymore, and getting whacked in the first round of the playoffs isn't very exciting anymore. And watching that quarterback get pummeled week in, week out, and, spend a good part of his first 2 seasons injured, much more than certainly he should be, and then getting leapfrogged for Andre Diller by the Eagles in the draft, and then taking a project out of Alabama State, just look at the Duke Johnson trade. I mean, it's basically a 3 that falls back to a 4 if Duke Johnson gets hurt. I mean, that's it's clear that there are people in panic mode there, and it starts with their weird division of labor. You've got an owner in Cal McNair who didn't build the franchise. He got handed it by his dad, and he's never been through this before. There's nobody in that building with the type of institutional, organizational acumen who's been through this before to have a steady hand. It's everybody doing it together for the first time, and I think that's been obvious. You can see that through the moves they've made.
That being said, do you still like them to win the South?
I never liked them to win the South.
Who's your pick?
I liked Indianapolis, and I still do.
Oh, really?
I think Houston finishes 3rd in that division.
Wow.
I think Jacksonville's better than them. I don't think anything Houston's done has changed my opinion. I figured they're slightly better than Tennessee and not as good as the other 2 teams. And that's even with Laremy Tunsil there now. I still look at the totality of that offensive line. I look at where J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless are in their career. I look at the overall way that offense sort of has been managed and coached, the play calling, et cetera. I don't think they're going to be a factor in the AFC.
All right, so we've been talking about the Skins offense and how inexperienced it is, especially at receiver, against this Eagles team. Man, it just, on paper, it just looks like a real tough spot for Case Keenum and those receivers. 5 out of the 6 receivers that made the team literally have no experience. And Geis is starting with no experience. So how can the Redskins beat the Eagles? Or is it impossible?
Well, look, I think it's going to be a tough year for the Redskins. I mean, they're kind of like 3/4 through a rebuild that they just haven't quite been able to convince themselves, that it's a full go. But that's coming, and the young quarterback will play at some point. But I just think, I mean, we could talk about skill players till the cows come home, but if the left side of that offensive line is as god-awful as I think it will be, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, everything else is deck chairs on the Titanic. If they can't do anything up front, and, you know, there's some pieces on the other side, but in this day and age, if you've got that kind of hole to exploit, and they're in a division with the Eagles, I look at their D-line, it might be as deep as any in the league, might be the deepest, and then we know what the Cowboys can do up front. I just, you know, Godspeed. I think the defense in Washington will be top 10, but I don't think it's going to be, I mean, you know, unless it's the 85 Bears, I don't think and it's just a turnover machine. I just don't see how it's going to be enough to offset how bad I believe they'll be on the offensive side of the ball. And I think they're going to be behind quite a bit. I think they're really flawed offensively.